Sounds like Maxx Crosby is on the trade block this offseason, but I don't think the Titans are in a position to make that deal. I'll explain why on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5. You're going to get $200 in bonus bets if you win. On today's show, I'm going to talk about the 5-year outlook for the Tennessee Titans, and boy, does it look good. I'm going to talk about some of my favorite values at other positions of need for the Titans in the 2026 NFL Draft, but we're going to start with a conversation about Maxx Crosby and whether the Titans should make a trade. I don't think they're in a spot to do the deal. Before we dive into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. We got roster decisions coming up for the Tennessee Titans. Free agency, the draft is right around the corner. If you want to stay as up to date, as informed, and as entertained as a Tennessee Titans fan could possibly be, make sure that you stay locked in with the #1 Tennessee Titans podcast in the world, Locked On Titans. Also, want to let you know that today's mailbag questions are coming directly from the Locked On Titans group chat. Make sure that you join the Locked On Titans Everydayer Club. You're going to get ad-free versions of the show in your podcast feed. You're going to get added to a Locked On Titans group chat where all of these mailbag questions ultimately came from. But first question comes from Spawnable. He says, Maxx Crosby deal? Don't have the roster to do it, but the money is right. And he's 100% correct. The money is right for Maxx Crosby. He's only going to be making around $30 to $35 million for the next couple of years. And more importantly, the Raiders would save a ton of money and only have about $5 million in dead money if they trade Maxx Crosby. According to Jay Glazer from Fox Sports, Maxx Crosby has played his last snap with the Las Vegas Raiders. And look, I know that Titans fans would get excited about making that move, and I think that Maxx Crosby would be a perfect fit for Robert Saleh's defense as a big body, physical, dominant defensive end. He would be Robert Saleh's Nick Bosa at the end of the day. So the fit is absolutely perfect. But where the Titans are at in their life cycle as a team, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. And what I would do is I would go back to the Micah Parsons trade. Micah Parsons was traded to the Green Bay Packers for Kenny Clark, who is a pretty good player, 2 first-round draft picks as well, 2026 and 2027. Ask yourself, could the Tennessee Titans afford to give up T'Vondre Sweat, this year's first-round pick, number 4 overall, and next year's first-round pick to get Maxx Crosby? Can the Tennessee Titans, where they're at as a team, afford to do that? My answer is an obvious no. That is way too expensive. That's too much to ask. Look, if the Titans were already a better team, if the Titans went 7-10 last year and were ready to take the next step, then yeah, sure. But the Tennessee Titans need to stack their team with young, good players. The Titans aren't in a position to give up a young player and 2 first-round picks to add a guy, especially when they have $100 million in cap space. Maxx Crosby is a much better player right now than Trey Hendrickson, but when Trey Hendrickson is healthy, actually, it's pretty close, if we're honest. Just Hendrickson is an older guy. But I would rather the Titans keep their 2 first-round picks, keep T'Vondre Sweat, and go sign Trey Hendrickson to a 2-year, $70 million deal. I would rather do that than give up 2 first-round picks when you can get a guy who's, when healthy, pretty close to the quality of Maxx Crosby. Remember, Trey Hendrickson, in the last 2 years that he was fully healthy, 17.5 sacks in both years. That's a guy who would fit perfectly. So I would rather use the Titans' assets in a different way. If the Titans were further along in their life cycle as a team and closer to being a true contender, I would say yes, go all in, make the play like the Packers did for Micah Parsons. But where the Titans are at right now, I'm sorry, I just don't think giving up multiple first-round picks for Maxx Crosby makes a ton of sense. If you could give up the number 4, if you could give up T'Vondre Sweat and the number 4 overall pick and get Maxx Crosby, I would do that. And that's where the next question comes in. It's ESZ. He says, no Bain, no Reese, Crosby, potentially more interesting, but still, look, if the Raiders would take the number 4 overall pick and T'Vondre Sweat, I would send that right now. Go, do it. Because at the end of the day, you're looking to get somebody at number 4 who will turn into Maxx Crosby. You know what I mean? That's what you're looking for. And Crosby is still young enough where I think it makes a ton of sense for the Titans. They could even give him a new deal with all the cap space that they have. But again, I do not think that Maxx Crosby would go for the number 4 pick and then like T'Vondre Sweat or a player of that caliber. You know what I mean? And the Titans don't have a lot of players like that a team would want. So it makes it harder to make a trade like that. And if you aren't including a young player with value, then you're going to have to add more picks. Now, if they wanted pick number 4 and a 3rd rounder, I'd do it. If they wanted pick number 4 and a 4th rounder, I'd do it. But once we're getting into 2 first-round picks and a 3rd, or a first-round pick, a 2nd-round pick, and a 3rd-round pick next year, like, the Titans are a team that needs to use the draft to add young talent to the roster. They can't afford some of these packages that are probably going to be more realistic for what Maxx Crosby is going to go for. So, yeah, I'm not out of it. I'm not like, no, I would never do that. I don't want him, blah, blah, blah. But realistically speaking, the price that it's going to cost, the Titans can't afford to pay it. Now, moving forward past Maxx Crosby, I got a question here from Vol for Life. He says, what's the biggest need on offense and defense at pick number 4? And to me, it is obviously edge and wide receiver. Those are the 2 biggest needs that the Tennessee Titans have, especially when you look at the free agent market. I think that there are going to be more answers at cornerback, which is the other big-time need for the Titans. Those are the 3 top needs by far with a bullet, no question asked. Edge, wide receiver, and cornerback. And funny enough, outside of offensive tackle, those are the 3 most important positions in the NFL outside of quarterback. It's quarterback, pass rusher, offensive tackle, wide receiver, and cornerback. Those are the 5 most important positions in the entire sport, period. Premium positions. So the Titans are desperate at those positions pretty much across the board now, outside of quarterback and offensive tackle could be debated at this time because Dan Moore obviously isn't a long-term answer. J.C. Latham has been up and down, but I don't think the Titans are going to make a drastic move at tackle this offseason. When you're talking about the number 4 overall pick, it is by far edge and wide receiver because the cornerbacks that would go first round, I don't think that you could take either of them at number 4. You know, a Mansour Delane, a Colton Hood, or Jamad McCoy. I just don't think you could take those guys reasonably at number 4. So to me, it is clearly either edge or wide receiver if they stick at 4. Now, Chris Fern asked me, what is your top 3 options at pick number 4? And it is going to stay this way the entire draft season. It's Arvell Reese, it's Rueben Bain, and it's Jordyn Tyson. Now, I will tell you, I am starting to come around to moving Rueben Bain to number 1. Rueben Bain, Arvell Reese, and if they're both off the board because they go 2 and 3, which is absolutely possible right now, it would be so depressing if it went Fernando Mendoza, Rueben Bain, Arvell Reese, and then the Titans had to go to the next tier of player, which I know a lot of you guys are saying David Bailey. I'm not as high on David Bailey as some of you guys are. I like David Bailey, but he's not in the same class to me as Rueben Bain and Arvell Reese. So if both those guys are off the board, I'm going to continue to have this answer. It is Jordyn Tyson. Out of Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon, Jordyn Tyson. Tyson is the only one to me that can be a true dominant number 1 wide receiver in the NFL on the outside, which is what is required in Brian Daboll's offense. Think about the Malik Neighbors role in Brian Daboll's offense. Jordyn Tyson is the only guy who could truly fit that. I'm not as high on Carnell Tate as all of you guys are. I think he's simply Alec Pierce. He's simply a deep threat that can be a number 2 wide receiver. I like Makai Lemon more than Carnell Tate, but at the end of the day, I think he's mostly going to be a guy who plays in the slot, and that is very important in Brian Daboll's offense. But I'm taking the outside wide receiver with number 1 wide receiver potential over the slot only guy every day of the week. That's just where I'm at. And I know that there are concerns about Jordyn Tyson's injury, but you're going to hear me say this for the next 3 months. He played great football after the ACL tear in 2022, so I'm not concerned about the ACL. He broke his collarbone, which is not related to his legs at all. That's not a pattern injury. Collarbones are freak injuries. I don't even include that in my mindset. And then he had a hamstring injury. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, the best wide receivers in the entire NFL, CeeDee Lamb, all these guys have had hamstring injuries in their career. So yeah, wide receivers run a lot. They run really fast. They're moving at crazy speeds and changing directions. They get hamstring injuries. So the ACL is the only injury that I'm truly worried about, and he played great football after that. So I'm just not as worried about the Jordyn Tyson injury stuff as all of you guys seem to be. I am going to bet on that talent, okay? And I see people say, oh, we thought that with Treylon Burks. If you watch Treylon Burks' tape from Arkansas and Jordyn Tyson and think that those are the same player and the same kind of player and the same talent level, I really probably can't have a conversation with you because that's crazy to me. But those are my answers for that. Now let's get into the roster and get into the draft more because there are other positions that aren't premium that the Titans still need help at. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by ZocDoc. All right, folks, listen here. I know that finding a doctor that you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want someone who's in network, nearby, has availability, but you also want a doctor who listens and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. That kind of doctor does exist, and finding them is easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone that you love without all the hassle. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across 50 states covering over 200 specialties from primary care to dentistry to dermatology to eye care. I've been looking for an ENT lately, and I found one easy on ZocDoc. Stop putting off your doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor that you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want a candidate who truly matches what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support this show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Again, it's a mailbag episode, and if you want your mailbag questions read on the show, hop in to the Locked On Titans Everydayer Club. You're going to get ad-free versions of the podcast. You're going to get added to a Locked On Titans group chat where we got a ton of conversations all the time. I take your questions directly from there, and you're going to get access to a Locked On Titans merch store as well. But with that being said, diving back into the mailbag questions, Jonathan Davis asks, trade back? And yes, I would love for the Tennessee Titans to have the opportunity to trade back in this draft if certain guys aren't available. Again, I'm taking Rueben, Bain, and Arvell Reese, and I'm not passing on them. I'm not dropping back. I'm not trading back if those guys are on the board. If those two guys are not on the board, though, yes, I love Jordyn Tyson next, but Jordyn Tyson is not someone who I would say, oh, we can't trade back. We can't, we got to stick and pick. I like Tyson the best, and I would want him to be the pick at number 4 if Bain and Reese are off the board. But I would prefer a trade back at that point in time as well. So I am fully on board with the Titans trading back. And here's another reason why, and you're going to hear me say this multiple times over the next 3 months. This is not a very good top end of the first round. Most of these guys, I think, Arvell Reese, Rueben Bain, even Fernando Mendoza, in my opinion, Jordyn Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, David Bailey, in a good draft class like 2024 that had Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May and Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Joe Alt and Roma Dunze and J.C. Latham. And I think that all of these guys at the top of the draft would be ranked lower than those guys. No question about it. This is not a good top of the first round, in my opinion. So with that in mind, of course, I would love to trade back. But it is annoying to me that I see a lot of people say, oh, well, if those guys aren't there, trade back. This ain't Madden. You can't just put your pick into a trade finder and then get a million offers thrown at you. You need someone to trade up. And do you think that all these other teams in the NFL don't know that this is a bad first round? Why would they trade up to number 4? I just can't stand when people say stuff to me like that. Oh, just trade back. Just trade, fine, then trade back. Well, what if they can't? What if nobody offers them anything? You want them to take a 4th round pick to move back from 4 to 13 just because? You have to have a trade partner. You can't just say, oh, well, then trade back. That's not how it works. This isn't Madden. So, yes, I want to trade back, but that doesn't mean that somebody's going to pay what it costs to trade back. Now, who could be a trade back partner for the Tennessee Titans if they were to get a trade back? FL Caboose asked that, and my answer is Cleveland. Big time option. They have pick number 6. They have pick number 24. They have pick number 39. They have pick 70. If you want to give me pick 6, pick 24, and pick 70, I'll make that deal right now. I'll make that deal right now. Really, if Rueben Bain or Arvell Reese isn't there, I'd take that in a heartbeat. I'd take 6 and 24 to move down 2 spots. I would take 6 and 39 to move down 2 spots. I would. And here's why I think Cleveland makes sense. Because they're a team that is interested in offensive line. And if the Arizona Cardinals were to take an offensive lineman at number 3, Francis Mwaga, Spencer Fano, the Browns, who really want an offensive lineman, they may say, hey, we're not going to risk it. We want to make sure we get the second best offensive tackle in the draft. We're going to move up a couple of spots and ensure that we do that. And if the New York Giants lose Jermaine Elimimor as their right tackle, the Giants could look to take an offensive tackle as well. So that could create a supply and demand situation where Cleveland thinks we got to jump in front of the New York Giants to get that offensive tackle. Or the Tennessee Titans can manufacture that demand and say, hey, Cleveland, we're getting some calls about teams that are interested to move up and get offensive tackle too. Would you like to throw your hat in the ring? Whether it's true or not, bluff them. So I think that Cleveland is a prime trade back partner for the Titans. I think the New Orleans Saints make a ton of sense as well. There's been a lot of talk in New Orleans about needing a playmaker on offense, whether that's Jeremiah Love, whether that's one of the wide receivers. New Orleans has pick 8, pick 42, pick 73. Give me all 3 of them and you can move up to 4. Give me 8, 73, and next year's first, and you can move up to 4. I would do all of that. Kansas City, they have 9, they have 40. They don't have a ton of draft picks, quite honestly, to work with. But give me 9, give me 40, give me a second rounder next year. You can move from 9 to 4 and get Jeremiah Love, David Bailey, Jordyn Tyson, whoever you want. I don't really care at that point. The Dallas Cowboys at number 12. Now, going from 4 to 12 could net you a huge return. The Dallas Cowboys have pick 12, they have pick 20, and they have an extra first-round pick in 2027 because of the Micah Parsons trade. Give me 12, 20, and your first-round pick next year. Give me 12, 20, and a second-round pick next year. Give me 12, a second-round pick, and 2027's first. You got a deal. I would do all of that. So I think there are avenues for the Titans to get a trade down, but you just have to remember those teams have to be interested as well. You can't force them to make a move. Again, this is not Madden. Okay? Now, next question, more draft stuff. Tyson, my guy Tyson says, who are your best second-round wide receivers? And this is why I want to go edge in the first round. This is why I want Rueben Bain. This is why I want Arvell Reese. Because then you could follow that up in the second round with a wide receiver. Casey Concepcion, Chris Brazzell, Jeremy Bernard, Omar Cooper, Elijah Surratt, Ted Hurst, Zachariah Branch, Denzel Boston, Chris Bell, Antonio Williams. There are a ton of day 2 wide receivers that I would like a ton. I would love all those guys. Now, some of those guys are probably going to end up going in round 1, whether it be Concepcion, Cooper, Boston. I think those guys all have a chance to go. But I think Bernard, Surratt, Hurst, Branch, Bell, Antonio Williams, which I'm less in on Chris Bell from Louisville because he did just blow out his ACL. You know what I mean? That does have to tamp him down. I think he'll end up going late second, early third at this point because of that. But again, I just think there is such a depth of good wide receiver prospects. And a lot of people say to me, the Titans need to take a wide receiver number 1 overall with their number 1 overall pick because they need a number 1 wide receiver. But let me remind you, who was the last true number 1 wide receiver the Tennessee Titans had? It was A.J. Brown. Where did he get picked? Pick number 51. Taking a wide receiver in the top 5 is not the only way to get a true number 1 wide receiver. Now, Kentucky Killa says, draft a running back? What round? I'm in for a running back. I'm in. If the Titans were to trade down to pick 8, pick 9, and take Jeremiah Love in the first round, I'm cool with it depending on the return they get back if it's anything like the returns that we just talked about. Jadarian Price, 3rd rounder, I'm in. Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska, 3rd round, love that. Nick Singleton from Penn State, 3rd round. Katron Allen from Penn State, 3rd round. Mike Washington, Arkansas, 3rd round, 4th round. If they take any of these guys who I'm talking about outside of Jeremiah Love in the 4th round, the Titans are going to have the number 1 pick on day 3 of the draft. If they use that on a running back, I'm going to be hype. I love Emmett Johnson and Mike Washington. I love them. All right. Power. Going to fit perfect in Brian Dable's system. So I love that. Spawnable also asked, who are the best draft linebackers? I am not going to take an off-ball linebacker too early in the draft. At the end of the day, off-ball linebacker is not a premium position, and I think that you can find a great player later in the draft. Now, some of you are saying, Arvell Reese is an off-ball linebacker. He's going to be an edge in the NFL. He should be a full-time edge rusher. All right? He's not an off-ball linebacker. I don't know how people don't understand the conversation at this point. But some mid-round linebackers who I think make a ton of sense, Anthony Hill out of Texas, Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech, and Harold Perkins out of LSU. Imagine Robert Saleh with Harold Perkins, who used to be an edge rusher, is now an off-ball linebacker, played a little in the secondary in his past as well. Freak athlete. He is going to destroy the combine. He is so versatile. And if you want to say to me that you would rather have Rueben Bain at pick number 4, pass on Arvell Reese, and then go get Harold Perkins, who might be able to do some similar things, even if he's more slanted to off-ball linebacker than edge, with Arvell Reese being more edgy than off-ball, I don't think that I could argue with you on that. So I'm with you there. Logan says, how aggressive should the Titans be with free agent money? I'd say out of 10, like a 6 to 7. They don't need to go out and give 4 or 5 big, huge $20 million contracts, but they need to go out and give 2. I think at edge, at cornerback, is where the Titans really need to spend big. Edge and cornerback, and then you give some mid-level deals at maybe offensive line, at maybe wide receiver. So I think 2 massive deals for the Titans, and then a bunch of mid-level and small deals. I'd say a 6 to 7 out of 10 in terms of aggressiveness in free agency. Andrew says, who are the best free agent wide receivers? Well, the expected, or not expected, but the technical free agent wide receivers that would be the best are George Pickens, Alec Pierce, if Michael Pittman Jr. gets cut by the Colts, Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants, Romeo Doubs. You could throw Juwan Jennings in there from San Francisco, although I am not interested, 0% interested in Juwan Jennings. But the reality is, most of those guys probably aren't going to be available. Pickens, not going to be available. Pierce, not going to be available. Wan'Dale Robinson is rumored to go back to the New York Giants. Romeo Doubs may be available. He may be the one that is realistic. And there's some conversation that if the Colts were to sign Alec Pierce back to a big-time deal, which is what I expect, they may cut Michael Pittman Jr., and he would instantly become my number one target. Green Titan says, how to get a number one wide receiver of no free agency, and they go defense at number 4. Well, I talked about that earlier, Green Titan. Those aren't the only avenues to get a number one wide receiver, and the reality is number one wide receivers are never available in free agency. It's like my guy Brad Hopkins says about offensive linemen. Great offensive linemen are basically never available in free agency because if they are great, teams aren't going to let them go because offensive line is so important. Finding a number one wide receiver is not only accomplished through a first-round pick and a big free agent deal. Maybe the Titans make a trade for a wide receiver, which I'm going to talk about that later in the offseason. They could get a guy in the second round who blows up and becomes a number one wide receiver. So you got to keep that in mind. And Jonathan Davis also asked, getting a running back, tight end, and nose tackle with all the other big needs they have, he thinks that they can't solve it all. And listen, I don't think that the Titans can solve every roster problem that they have either. I don't think that's possible this offseason. You're not going to get a dominant number one edge, a number one wide receiver, 2 awesome outside cornerbacks, replace, talent on the interior defensive line, find a number one Mike linebacker to play with Cedric Gray. Absolutely find your left tackle of the future after Dan Moore's gone after the year. Find a center to replace Cush. Find your long-term right guard. Find a stud running back. Find a great tight end too. But you're not going to find all that. That's not the goal. You can't go in thinking that you're going to do all of that. But you can use mid-level deals to find good value players. Not every player in the NFL is a superstar. Not every good roster has superstar level players at every single spot. You have to find good value in the NFL. You have to find bargain bin options that your coaches turn into great players. That's how you win in the NFL. Not by having superstars at every position on your roster, but by finding value with guys who are just regular depth players. Okay? So sign a Tyler Algier. Get Dawson Knox if he's cut. Find an interior defensive lineman in undrafted free agency or in free agency itself and trade Devondre Sweat away. And then still use your big free agent money on an edge, on a corner. Use your big draft picks on an edge, on a wide receiver, on a cornerback. You're not going to be able to solve every issue this offseason. So those are parameters that I don't have to live within, quite frankly. But with that being said, I got a lot more mailbag questions coming for you guys. Some more big picture stuff about the Titans' outlook going forward over the next 5 years, how they fit within the AFC South. Gonna continue today's edition of Locked On Titans right now. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play by play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Today's episode is also brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, packed schedules, having an easy and reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, and quick lunches. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive your free dessert. Titans fans, let's cap off today's mailbag edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Again, answering your guys' questions. And as a reminder, I got all of these mailbag questions from the Locked On Titans group chat, part of the Locked On Titans Everydayer Club. Hit the description down below, or the link in the description down below. You're going to get ad-free versions of the podcast. You're going to get added to the Locked On Titans group chat on Discord. Locked On Titans merch store access. It's only $5 a month. I give you guys free content 5 days a week, all year round. I never miss a show, never take a holiday off. It's a cup of coffee each month to support me and support the show and get bonus content on top of the free content that you get here with the Locked On Titans podcast. So I implore you guys, make sure to check that out. And if you want your mailbag questions read on future episodes, that is how you're going to get them in. But with that being said, moving on to more of your mailbag questions. Travis says, is this the most important offseason in Tennessee Titans history? Possibly. I mean, I would say that right now, the 2019 offseason, where the Titans bring in Roger Saffold and they have the best draft class in team history with A.J. Brown and Jeffrey Simmons, I would say that that is probably the most important offseason in the Tennessee Titans history because it resulted in actual winning. Could this ultimately be? Yes, but we won't know that for years to come when the Titans go and have success and we look back and say, oh, this was the most important all season. They got new jerseys. They hired a new coach. They added a bunch of great players that made a big difference. But you could look at last offseason and say, adding Mike Borgonzi and getting rid of Rancor Thon, getting Cam Ward. You could look at last offseason and say that that was ultimately more important if this offseason turns into a good one. So it's possible, but we can't know that anytime soon. Travis also asked, how many wins are the new coaches worth? To me, 2 or 3. The roster has to get better. The players on the roster right now have to improve internally. That will be worth 2 to 3 wins. And then the coaching staff can be worth 2 to 3 wins. And the Titans could go from, 3 wins to 7, or if things really pop off, 10 wins. You know what I mean? So I'll say 2 to 3 for just the coaches. Kevin said, current offensive and defensive player that will benefit the most from the new coaches. To me, it's Cam Ward on offense and Femi Oladipo on defense. I almost went with Kevin Winston. Not going to lie. That was a big thing, but I think the impact that Robert Saleh can have on Femi Oladipo and then Brian Daboll on Cam Ward, that's my answer. Tennessee Gator said, 5-year outlook for the Titans. My answer is good. It looks good. Mike Borgonzi, I believe in, okay? I think that Robert Saleh has a great plan to keep his coaching staff stocked, and he's a good enough coach. I believe in Cam Ward. So if I believe in the GM, I believe in the quarterback, I believe in the coach, that means that the 5-year outlook is looking pretty good. David asked, what's the outlook in the AFC South? Well, here's what I would tell you. C.J. Stroud doesn't look like the same player he was his rookie year. Houston has a ton of draft picks, which really helps them out, but they don't have a ton of cap space. Now, they're going to be able to make more cap space, but, Houston already has a pretty good roster, and they have a ton of picks. They're in a pretty good spot. Indianapolis doesn't have a lot of picks after they made that crazy trade for Sauce Gardner. They have some cap space, but is Indy really going to go out and splash in free agency? That's not normally what they do. Daniel Jones is coming off a major injury, and I knew that he was going to turn back into a pumpkin eventually anyway. Jacksonville has no picks because they traded their picks for Travis Hunter, who's not that great anyway, and they don't have a ton of cap space. Now, cap space is all manageable, blah, 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 this and that, but I think the AFC South is as ripe as ever for the Tennessee Titans to make a push, and it happens all the time in the NFL. It's, would anybody have said the Patriots are going to beat out the Buffalo Bills for the AFC East? Would anybody have looked at the Jags and said that they're going to beat out the Texans for the AFC South? Would anybody have looked at the Bears and said they're going to be better than the Vikings, Packers, and Lions? No, but that's how the NFL works. Andrew asked, what about a Ridley and Pollard trade? Nope, they make too much money. If we're talking about cutting these guys because they make too much money. Why would a team not only pay them the money that they're owed, but trade a draft pick for them as well? Like, that just, that's not going to happen. Atomic Island says, what about the potential of Gunnar Helm and J.C. Latham? Again, I think that Gunnar Helm could be a top 10 tight end in the NFL. I think he could be better, the same or better than a guy like Dalton Kincaid or like Austin Hooper in his prime. I think that Gunnar Helm could be just as good as those guys, a top 10 tight end in the NFL. J.C. Latham still has the potential to be a top 10 offensive tackle, right tackle in the NFL. He looked bad with the hip injury. He looked bad early in the season. The penalties look bad. I get it. But at the end of the year, after the bye week, when he wasn't getting penalties, J.C. Latham was a good player. He only gave up 2 sacks in 8 games and went against some pretty good defensive fronts and was moving people in the run game. I'm going to do a video on Tic Tac Titans about J.C. Latham after the bye week. But again, I keep saying it, the conversation about J.C. Latham has just gone off the rails entirely. He's still a good player and has a ton of potential to get even better. Cameron didn't really ask a question, but he said, what about this? Interior defensive line, Jeffrey Simmons, Sebastian Joseph Day, John Franklin Myers, James Lynch, Cam Horsley. I like that a lot. I'd like to see another more run stuffing, and this is with a trade of T'Vondre Sweat, because that's what we were talking about at the time. I would like to see a guy in the T'Vondre Sweat mold from undrafted free agency or from, a cheap veteran deal added in there to make 6. But I do like that group in general. DN, Bain, Hendricks, Femi, Harrell, Jihad Ward, Sam Williams. Cooking with grease. Right there. That is, imagine if we had Bain and Trey Hendrickson, and then Femi playing the Sam, Jalen Harrell is depth, Sam Williams is depth, Jihad Ward is depth. I mean, that right there could make a grown man cry. What a great group that would be. Prostitute. I told myself I wouldn't mess that up. I couldn't help it. I'm so sorry. Said, favorite Super Bowl foods. He asked me for my non-traditional, but I am a traditionalist when it comes to Super Bowl foods. I don't really do anything crazy. I like chicken wings. I like buffalo chicken dip. I like magic dip, which is my own personal chip dip recipe. I like guacamole, and I love drinking Coca-Cola. I'm going to have me 2 Coca-Colas during the Super Bowl. Can't wait. And then Andrew asked, pineapple on pizza? Absolutely. Anything goes on pizza. Pizza is just a vessel. Crust is just a vessel. I make barbecue chicken pizza, buffalo chicken pizza, taco pizza, dill pickle pizza, regular traditional pepperoni and cheese pizza. I love a barbecue chicken pizza with barbecue chicken, red onion, parsley, barbecue sauce, pineapple. Pizza is just a vessel. I'm not a traditionalist when it comes to pizza. It's just bread. You can put anything on it like you would a sandwich. But with that being said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rueben, and this was Locked On Titans.